It is my pleasure to introduce Eric Laker, our guest speaker today. Eric was born and raised in Utah County. He served a 2-year mission in Brazil and earned a degree in economics from Brigham Young University. After graduating, Eric managed a retail jewelry store and then built Marquis Diamond Center. And there was one of you, when I was reading your Pilot Your Purpose, who was into jewels and jewelry and wanted to start a jewelry store. I apologize, I don't remember who you are. Hopefully you're here in the room, you're paying attention, because this is very applicable. In 2000, Eric founded Lashbrook, today's premier manufacturer of men's wedding rings. Lashbrook currently employs 165 people in Draper and Ephraim, Utah. If you've been to the Dollar Tree, you've seen the sign Lashbrook. That's where their facility is here in Ephraim. Eric and his wife Penny have 7 children and 2 grandchildren. They currently serve 2 days per week managing the Sandy Employment Center for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Eric also serves on the board of Mercury Free Mining and as chairman of the board at Lone Peak Hospital. So please welcome Eric Laker.
I grew up in Genola. Anybody know where Genola is? Okay. What's that?
Right by my house.
Where are you from?
West Mountain.
West Mountain? Yep. So did you go to Payson High?
On Salem.
You went to Salem. I went to Payson High. So little town. And I'm going to tell you a few things, and they become significant in a minute. This is not the house I grew up in, but it serves purpose. I'm the oldest of 9 children. There are 3 that weren't born yet for this picture. I started milking a cow when I was 8 years old. Okay, picking cherries every year for money when I was 9. Managed kind of a truck farm, vegetable farm where people come pick their own when I was 13. Built cabinets from about that time until my mission as well for the same family that owned the farm. And in the process, I drove a forklift. So I started driving a very large, heavy-duty forklift at 13. I showed up at work one afternoon out of school, and one of the buildings had a fire, and one end of it was gutted. I was 16 years old at the time. I hired a crew and redid the exterior of the building, re-insulated, and re-sheetrocked the interior to get it back so it was usable again. And that cow, when I was 8 years old, I think I was 8 or 9 at the time, we had kind of an ornery cow. And I don't know if you've seen the stanchion that a cow gets milked in. Basically, they put their head through 2 bars, you feed them some grain or something to keep them happy, and you close the bars so they can't go anywhere. Well, I opened the door, having put the grain in the stanchion one morning, and the cow, instead of walking in past me and putting her head in, backed me into the corner of the barn, put her head under my sternum and lifted me up against the wall and pinned me there for probably 20 or 30 seconds while I beat on it and tried to kick at it. And then she backed away and put her head in to the stanchion and started eating her grain. I think she had realized that I wasn't completely convinced that she was in charge. And she just wanted to set me straight. So anyway, despite the picture and the story of having worked from a very young age and everything, I grew up with tremendous financial security. That's a whole story of its own, not important. But I never, ever worried about the financial security of my family. Served the mission in Brazil, as was said, and went to BYU. And found myself sitting in a class like this one. There was an entrepreneur lecture series, a lot of more people, or a lot of people that are way more successful than I will ever be that presented there. And one day, one of them brought a survey, handed out a paper, and had us fill it out. Now, I don't remember the questions on the survey. I know that one of them was, where did you fit amongst your siblings? I was the oldest of 9. There were different questions, but some of these things that I just told you played heavily in this survey. And I ended up with the highest score possible for being entrepreneurial, okay? Which may have led to my demise. But anyway, it was just interesting. And I guess I want to ask the question, from the things that I just told you, why do you think that maybe I would score highly on a quiz about how entrepreneurial a person is? What do you think?
Been doing it since you were 8 years old, basically.
Okay.
Maybe you like being independent.
Okay. Anything else?
You're a hard worker.
Okay. I think there is that, certainly. Yeah.
You're the oldest of 9 kids, so you're used to bossing people around.
Okay, yeah, and that played out. I managed kids in the spring. We would buy tons of potatoes, and I'd hire a crew to cut them up, seed potatoes to plant. I'd hire a crew in the fall to harvest, and I started doing that when I was 13. Right, so these little things, but overall, driving the big forklift when I weighed 100 pounds, just all of those things together. Kind of gave me a sense that I could do whatever, right? And I survived the cow, right? So some things you don't dominate, but just having gone through them, you're okay. I survived going out. I remember one morning, I think it was about 25 below zero. It was a record, and having icicles dripping off hanging from my pinkies as I milked the cow, right? So anyway, we'll move along here. And I apologize, I didn't get a chance to run through this in advance. So, yeah, those are the things that maybe made me an entrepreneur. So I graduated with a degree in economics. I hated school. The reason I got the economics degree was that it was a good background for an MBA or a law degree, and there was just no way I was sticking around. I had the degree, my mom was happy, and I was on my way. Problem with an economics degree is there isn't anything out there specifically for someone with a bachelor's in economics. And so I ended up getting into retail jewelry, and this is a little bit of a story because I didn't deserve it. I applied, did anybody of you know what a newspaper is? And you remember the classifieds? And maybe down here you still actually have that a little bit because of the relatively limited ways to market. But I was had just graduated, was deciding on what I was going to do. I knew I wanted to be in business, but I didn't know what. And there was a job listed to manage a local jewelry store. It was called J.C. Keepsake. It was a store that was part of a chain out of Colorado. And I called and made an appointment for an interview. They didn't ask for a resume in advance because they knew that I probably didn't have access to a fax machine to fax it to them, right? So I get to this interview, I sit down with the district manager who has flown in from Colorado, and I hand him my resume. He glances over it and literally stood back up and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Laker, but you have no retail experience, no jewelry experience, and the management experience you got from when you were a young teenager." Right? And I convinced him to sit back down. I said, "Look, you've set aside a half hour to talk to me. Would you please tell me about the industry?" And I proceeded to ask him questions. Okay, what does it take to become a manager? What does a manager make? Where do you go from there? And we visited for half an hour, and he proceeded to offer the job to his first choice, who was a gentleman that was assistant manager at a Mr. Mac in the mall there in Orem. Well, long story short, he screwed up the offer, and as he's on his way to the airport, or just about to leave the mall on his way to the airport on Friday afternoon, he finds out that this gentleman is not going to take the job after all. And Saturday morning, the rest of the story, I don't know exactly what happened. I am surmising. But I believe that Saturday he was sitting in a store in Colorado thinking, okay, so I've got to report back to corporate on Monday, and I can either tell them that I blew the job offer with the candidate that we wanted, and I've got to go back to Utah and go through the whole process all over again, or I can hire that Laker kid. He'll fall on his face, but it'll take a few months for anybody to really notice, and maybe I'll look better that way. And so I ended up with this job. Now, I was really fortunate because in that store, I had 3 former store managers, 1 former district manager, who had all chosen to not be doing that anymore because of lifestyle and different things. And so they trained me really well in jewelry and jewelry sales. And I was able to get them to work together really well. And we doubled the store sales over the next year and a half. So anyway, that was my start in the industry. I want you to catch there's a bit of a theme here, not part of a plan, okay? Just the way that it went. So anyway, that was my start in the industry. I want you to catch it. There's a bit of a theme here, not part of a plan, okay? Just the way that it went. So a year and a half later, I left with one of the gentlemen that I met in the store, that worked with me in the store, and we built a store called Marquee Diamond Center in Southtown Mall in San. That store was very successful. We had the highest sales per square foot in the mall for the entire time I was there. The partnership wasn't so successful. Partnership was rocky. Partnerships can be difficult. And so in 1999, I sold out and I started to carry lines for a couple of distributors of jewelry and started selling into jewelry stores. And one day in early 2000, would have been the week after, it was 2 weeks after the week of March, I went into a store in Salt Lake County where a gentleman owed me money, the owner of the store. I sold him some stuff, he hadn't paid. And he was telling me about his February, and he had sold $7,000 gross in February. My store the prior year in February had done $220,000. Okay. So anyway, and I've known the guy for a long time, and he struggled as a salesman. Let's just put it that way. But as I'm in the store visiting with him, I see these 6 rings sitting in the case, and they are ugly, men's bands. And I said, what are these? And he brightens up and he says, those are made out of titanium. My buddy and I are making them in my garage with his dad's old manual lathe. He pulled one out. It wasn't symmetrical. The finish was horrible. But it was a titanium wedding band. I'd never seen a titanium wedding band, and I was intrigued. And then I was really intrigued when he told me that he sold 7 of them in February for $300 a piece. So I started doing the math. So he managed to sell $7,000 in the month of love, and $2,100 of it were these ugly titanium bands. And so again, going along with this theme of I don't really have a long-term plan, I'm driving home and thinking about that and getting more and more excited. I get home and I get online and I spend an hour and a half pulling up 2 websites, because that's how long it took to load websites back then. And I found a company in Canada, another company in Australia that were making some titanium bands. And I thought, this is cool. I launched Lashbrook 2.5 months later at the largest jewelry show in the US in Vegas with a line of titanium wedding bands. And we'll get to some different parts about that in a minute. But at the very beginning, I made 2 decisions. First was that we were going to do everything possible in-house. We were going to produce it ourselves. And second, that whatever talent we developed, whatever technology we acquired, we would allow the end user, customer, to utilize those talents and technologies in any way they saw fit. So it was interesting because at the time, there really wasn't anybody selling any titanium wedding bands into the US market at a wholesale level. There was a German company that was in maybe 5 or 6 stores, and they were back on. I never heard of them again after 2000. So they just kind of went away. But other than that, there was nobody. at JCK that year, I launched, and the 800-pound gorilla in the US market launched at the same time. They had 10 styles, and because of that philosophy of letting them do whatever they wanted, I was showing 50 or 60 pieces that represented some 10,000 style variations. Okay? And that has been a trail with us. So today, we're in about 1,500 different mortar stores around the country. We sell at different online companies. We sell our home product, where we sell in our own online spaces. And we have, it was 165 employees when I sent you that. I think we're at 170 now. We're in the upstage. We will probably be around 200 this year. So anyway, you've got a phone, or I should have had you scan that a little earlier, but if you'd like to scan that to see a little bit of what we do, it would be fun. So, again, those two decisions have absolutely shaped who we are today. So, is this working?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Okay, so you should be seeing a ring that's, and I meant to have a slide that show you where you landed, and I forgot. That ring is in what we call the Lashbrook builder. That builder has one patent issued, one patent that we've been notified will issue shortly. And will create, at this point, it's impossible for us to know for sure, but we believe we've crossed 1 trillion rings. That will provide a price, a SKU, and a picture for. Okay? There's nothing like it in the world in any space. Your Nike has a builder that is really cool, nowhere close to the variations. Everybody's now using these, but we kind of pioneered this. And we've been doing it, I think we're into 7 years on it. I think I'm $5 million into that, what you're looking at there. And it has finally now matched what we can do in-house. There's still things that we can't design on there, but the vast majority of what we do is now represented on the builder. We have probably 7 or 8 people around the world full-time working on constantly advancing it, but it is absolutely state-of-the-art. What that means is that our customers, those that sell our rings, have the ability to work with the end user and help them create something that just blows away all of their initial expectations, which is really important because one of the things that we've learned over time is that as an industry, we don't care about men's wedding rings. And we don't, there's a chicken and egg argument here. Most guys don't know that they care about wedding rings until you convince them that they do. But it's amazing because we now have on a regular basis, well, I should say a regular basis, it's constant. We have stores that have adopted our program 100%, don't sell anyone else's product. And even though 2/3 of the couples walking in the store expect to spend $200 to $300 on a ring, they're selling those same customers $1,000 and $2,000, $3,000 rings every day. Because we're changing and the way the market looks at the ring, the way the individual thinks about the ring, and the value of the ring process. So, all of that said, I want to show you this. This is a picture of my family from 3 years ago. So, in the 3 years, he's been back from the mission. She's married, and my hand shakes. He's married, and they have one more child. Those are the 2 grandkids at Christmas. I show you this because I want you to know that I have a wonderful life. I'm very blessed, and I haven't forgotten it. We're going to get into the murkier side of things now, okay? I don't want to depress you. I don't want you to feel sorry for me. Life is great. My hobby right now is I've been building on to my house, a 700 square foot gym, yeah, I wouldn't be able to do that. I'm spending more on the gym than I spent on the house that I built in 1998. So life is good, okay? It's not, and I'm actually having more fun building the gym than I will ever have doing anything in it, but anyway. So, let's see. I want to talk about mistakes, all right? Lots of mistakes. So, kind of a look before you leap. I just alluded to this. What I chose to do is kind of challenging. I chose to step into a market where 99.9% of all of the rings being sold are being made in China for $5, to produce the product in the US and try to sell it for an average of around $1,500. Right? It's a bit of a challenge. I chose to do that in a space where the people selling the ring don't give a crap about it, literally. I mean, we don't have time to get into it. I sent my son that got married back in May, I sent him and his wife out on a 3-month trip, and they drove 10,000 miles, traversed 26 states, and secret shopped men's bands in 507 stores last year. We proved without a doubt that our industry does not give a crap about men's bands, okay? It was ugly. So we're using that information and we're trying to change it. We're trying to change the industry, but I want to just warn you, look before you leap. Think about the market. So name a big company, the biggest company you can think of. Give me a couple of names. Google, Tesla, Amazon. Okay, what do these companies have in common?
They sell a product.
Okay, to who?
Consumers.
Okay, to everyone, right? Tesla would be the exception, but how many people in the US don't own a car or aren't related to someone that owns a car, right? And how many cars will someone own in their lifetime? A whole bunch, right? They're consumable. Amazon and Google, they sell, their products are used by everyone, okay? How many people buy men's wedding bands?
More probably.
More and more because of what we're doing, yeah. But we average as an industry 1 per wedding. Okay, so on average, people get married, what, 1.3 times in their lifetime? I don't know what that works out to. I really should know that one, actually. So I picked a category with a very, very limited audience, right? So, people complain about NBA players and the amount of money they make. Why do they make so much money? It's because they're billions of consumers, right? Okay, so let's talk about some other mistakes. I talked about how much confidence I got from growing up. One of the biggest mistakes I made was not believing in myself at the very beginning. When I launched back in 2000, I launched through a distributor because I didn't think that I would have the resources to sell the product broadly fast enough, and I was worried that I wouldn't be able to wait for stores to pay me because I knew stores were going to take 30, 60, 90 days to pay me for what I shipped, and I felt like I needed somebody who's established to handle all of that. In the process, I gave up half of the gross revenue and 3/4 of the gross profit, and I really hamstringed myself. Not to mention the fact that they ended up becoming my competitor when they decided they could do it without me by buying it in China, and sued me and stiffed me for $100,000 in 2003. So make sure that you truly know what you could do and what you can't do. Be watching that really carefully, because as I look back on that, I would have cash flowed far better by having the larger gross profit numbers and the money coming in a little bit slower. It was a huge mistake. My lack of risk aversion. I lost a wife. Okay, I told you about how I grew up so financially secure. I married a woman who had grown up completely hand to mouth. And I did not recognize until the divorce was over and the anger had passed what I had done to her emotionally. It didn't manifest as it's because you're self-employed. It didn't the complaints were very different, but it was the emotional trauma of the debt and the uncertainty about when the next paycheck was coming. We never were out of money. She never had a time when she couldn't get what she needed, but just that fear because of the way that she had grown up cost me a marriage. This one's interesting, and first off, I want to apologize in advance. I don't want to offend somebody who has a more egregious PTSD, but for lack of a better term, I don't know what to call this. So over the years, I hated paydays, okay, because there was never enough money. So I would wake up in the middle of the night on the 19th with payday on the 20th. I'd wake up in the middle of the night. I'd remember payday's tomorrow. Payday's $100,000, and I've got $25,000 in the bank. And I would break into a cold sweat, and I would have to rationalize myself out of it. I'd have to say to myself, okay, it's a Friday. We'll hand out the paychecks. Most of them won't go in on Friday. We'll have a little bit of mail that does go on Friday, some checks still to that on Friday. And then Monday's our biggest check day, and Tuesday's the second biggest check day. And as the checks come in, we're probably going to be okay. And I'd work my way back to being calm enough to go back to sleep. Now, I wake up, now I dream that payroll is $500,000, which is what it is twice a month now. It's still $25,000 that's in the bank, and I have no prospects. And I wake up already in the cold sweat. The good news is I don't have to rationalize my way back to sanity. I just have to wake up and remember it was just a dream. But it is interesting the effect that stress can have on you long term. I lost this before I really started my first business, so that wasn't from that. But just know that the decisions that you make are going to have significant consequences. Now, the advantage I have in having run the business that way is that I control it, and along with a few family members, own the whole thing, right? And I own 75%. So where most people starting a business now would bring in investors early, would end up with a small piece at the end looking for an exit where they're going to make a bunch of money. I chose to run the business more as a career. Another big mistake. It took me until 5 years ago, to finally hire an amazing CFO. For years, I did it myself. Then I had a bookkeeper that was that was doing it. And then I started hiring part-time CFOs. I don't know if you're familiar with those services. That was a disaster, the part-time CFOs, because I got comfortable with the idea that they knew my numbers, and they didn't. And they helped me to make some really big mistakes. So if you start a business, do whatever is necessary to make sure that you completely understand the numbers always. That was huge. Squirrels. Other people's product. 3 times I introduced other people's product into what we did. All 3 times it blew up on me. Remember who you are, what you do, who you are in the market. Don't get distracted from that. And then lack of a management system. I hated meetings early in my career. I would look around the room and I would figure out how much I was paying each person per hour to sit there. And it drove me nuts, okay? I have come to love meetings because we introduced a management system. Now, the one that we use is called EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System. It's based on a book called Traction. This book is amazing. Gino Wickman has never had an original idea in his life. Okay, and I'm being harsh, that's not true. But it incorporates best practices from all over the place and puts together a good way to manage your business. I'm not trying to sell you on that one. I'm just saying that from the very beginning, if you start something, have a plan, a structure that will work for you as you become $1 million company, a $10 million company, a $100 million company, and build your way into that. It helps you to handle vision, where you're going, what you're going to look like when you get there, all of your data, people, right seat on the bus, GSW, they get it, do they want it? GSW. I got that wrong. GCW, capable. Get it? Are they capable and do they want it? It gets you handling your issues in a structured way on a weekly basis so that you can't just ignore them and focus on the things that are working well while this thing back here is building up to kill you. Okay? And then it very much handles process and traction. Traction being your quarterly rocks, the things that you've got to accomplish now to be who you want to be 3 years from now. Any questions? Trying to think if I had anything else. I do have one more section. But
Where did you come up with the name Lashbrook?
so Lashbrook was the first name of my third great grandfather. He settled the Bear Lake area. Like I said, 9 siblings. My mom loved the name, and every time a male grandchild was on the way, she would suggest it as a name. We figured that if we put it on the side of a building, she'd stop. And she did. Coincidentally, about 2 years ago, I found out that Lashbrook had apprenticed in England as a silversmith before he came to the United States. So it turns out that we're a 6th generation jeweler that was skipped 4 generations. So kind of cool. All right, can I get a little philosophical really quickly? Okay. How much should your boss make on the money or on the work that you do? I need a couple answers. I've been wanting to ask this question in meetings at work, and my executive team won't let me. How much do you want your boss to make on the work that you do?
If you want to keep all of it for yourself, right? If you're the employee, you don't want your boss to make anything off what you do. You want to keep it.
We end up seeing that a lot. Yeah. What do you think?
Depends how trustworthy your boss is. Like, are they taking risk off of your plate for you? Like, you're going to get paid and you're going to have a job, that may be worth something. Otherwise, no.
Okay.
Wanting to make a lot of money.
Okay. I've always said that if I worked for somebody else, I hope they'd have their own jet. Okay. I'd want it to be somebody that is making what we do as an organization work. Right? This is like I said, I'm getting a little philosophical. I apologize. I hope I don't offend anybody. This is a review that I got recently on Indeed from a former employee. This company will fire you in a heartbeat if you're not fast enough, and rarely are people fast enough for them. They say they'll give you a year to do the job well, but within a few months, they will expect you to be superhuman. Owners are heartless, and managers are just sheep for the owners. Okay? Makes me look good, right? Makes me look really good. In my defense, in the response that I wrote, I said, we are every day very grateful for the 150 superhumans that work for us, and et cetera. But I want you to realize, I hope that you can recognize, I guess, that you have no idea at this point what goes into a business in general and what goes into the business specifically that you work for. I remember everybody I ever worked for before I started on my own. I would try to calculate the tons of money they were making. I look back now and I look at some of those businesses and I'm like, it's amazing that they were able to pay their car payments. And I thought that they had to be just absolutely loaded, right? The answer that I would hope for from one of my employees would be that my boss makes a ton of money off me because I am awesome. I work my butt off to help him be successful in his business. And I trust that in doing so, he's going to recognize that and my career is going to grow and I'm going to be more and more successful. Y'all heard the term snowflake? Don't be one. Okay, this was off Wikipedia. Derogatory slang term for a person implying that they have an inflated sense of uniqueness, an unwarranted sense of entitlement, or are overly emotional, easily offended, and unable to deal with opposing opinions. Okay, that person that wrote that review gets a quarterly meeting with me, with the organization, me giving the meeting once a quarter. I'm doing it here in Ephraim on my way home today. In that meeting, I am wide open about numbers. I tell them the dollars we've brought in, how much of it is EBITDA, how much of it went other places. They know. If he'd been paying any attention at all, he would know that because he was not progressing along the line he needed to progress along to be where we wanted him in a year, that every day he came to work, I was losing money. Recognize your value. Make that an important thing. Just in closing, I want to give you my definition of an entrepreneur. And it's borrowed from, is it Frost? I think that you can be an entrepreneur anywhere you are, in anything that you do, in anything that you do. And if you are, you'll be successful and you'll be fulfilled. If you work for someone else in today's market and you bust your butt and you use your head and you come up with ideas to improve the processes that you're involved with, you'll be entrepreneurial, you'll be different from everybody around you, and you'll be highly rewarded. The competition is not steep. It's unfortunate, but it's not. So, any further questions?
What do you weigh the most when hiring an employee?
So we end up with a jillion resumes, and most of what we're hiring is our entry-level positions. You can't go find somebody that's done the stuff that we need people to do, right? And so the thing that we're looking the most at is consistency of employment. We know that, we need somebody on that line so that they're profitable for us in a year. We know that somebody that hops around from job to job every 6 months probably is going to hop on us, and we're just going to lose money on that person for the 6 months they're with us, right? And so that's the number one thing. We can get past that. If we got a good story in the resume of school and different things, you can certainly get past it. But that ends up being the number one thing for us. Now, if we're hiring higher level positions that we're not hiring from within, it's a lot different than that. But we do, by the way, promote from within. In that same response, I let people know that over half of our top compensated people in the organization started as entry-level people. So anyway, thank you very much. Appreciate your attention. I hope I didn't offend anybody.